Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Caper Sarah Code, and we're keeping it geekly with our new guest, Travis B. Hill. We're here to break down Thorn issue 0, 1, 2, and 3, and everything in between. Travis, welcome to the stream, man. It's nice to finally get you on. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Cody. Good to finally, kind of be face to face in this virtual space with you. I enjoy the show, and so thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, and I love seeing just how active you are within the community. It seems like recently you just have been pumping out work left and right. You just, I think, became the lead script writer and associate project manager for Sequential Potential Comics, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, so it's great. So Sequential Potential is a comic book company based in Nashville, and we do academic comics. So like researchers and nonprofits and professors and scholars will contract us, our organization, to turn their work, whether it's a research article or a book, monograph, study, or messaging that they have that they want to get out into a comic, whether it's a one-page abstract for their article, whether it's promotional material for their field or department. So there's a lot of different options, a lot of creative illustrations. And so I actually got the opportunity to start working for them just as a scriptwriter back in July 2021. Worked with them part-time, and then as our relationship grew, the company just got started in 2019 officially. And so I was like, yo, this is a really niche market. I am also a PhD student in history at the University of Texas at Dallas. So, my academics, that's one reason they kind of brought me on board, is because I am used to reading this like dense academic material and then also, writing comics. So now, so then an opportunity opened up at the end of back in December. I was kind of in between jobs looking for what was next. And the owners of the company reached out and said, hey, we're really trying to take this big. Like, we're trying to make this, we're trying to expand and make it legitimate. And we need somebody full time to kind of help us bring on the projects that we want to bring on. Because up until this year, it was like, kind of spot projects, like here and there. But now we're really, got some mass marketing going out, really trying to attract clients and because we have a great body of work. Like, anybody can go to sequentialpotential.com. That's a mouthful. We're changing it to spcomics.com.
That makes me feel better about stumbling on it in the beginning. I was like,
it's a lot, and we know that now. From a marketing standpoint, we just bought the domain spcomics.com today. So anyways, but now we have a very big body of work, and so anybody can check out our gallery, and so now we're bringing on clients pretty regularly. And one of the cool things so what they needed was somebody to have those conversations with clients who can kind of speak in academic and comic terms, kind of get those collaborations going, and then manage the projects across the board, and also take on script writing responsibilities. But one of the cool things in this position is, I've been able to bring on some friends in the comic book community that I've been friends with for a while. And that's always been something I really care about, is like, nobody makes it in comics on their own. It just doesn't happen. And so, if you get the chance to look, there's people I'm getting to work with now at SP that I was like, man, I hope I get to work with them someday. Talented artists. I mean, Minerva Fox, Daniel Irizarry, Don Nguyen, like, just, some friends and fantastic artists that I'm like, man, I wish I had the idea or the finances to work on a project with you. Now I do, because research scholars pay me out of their research grants to make comics for them. So
that almost makes you like a scholar though too, right?
Well, it does. So in the end it does. Like, you get your name. We get our credits on everything that we do. And so I don't have it here, but like one of the things that we do is when a researcher or an academic scholar has their a book coming out, they might want a 4-page comic, what we call a comic prologue, that goes at the beginning of the book that basically tells a story the thesis of the book is embedded in that story, right? So it gives you a quick introduction. Somebody can open that research book, read the comic, and be like, okay, I'm in. And so, you know, you've got, and right there at the front of the book on the comic in the credits page, art by, written by, or script by, art by, colors by. And so now next to these, you know, kind of big time academics that we've worked with, your name is right there in the book. So
dude, that's cool. That is so awesome, man. It's
a fun thing. And so, I mean, for me being, you know, trying to be a scholar myself, you know, finish up my PhD, it is good for the, you know, for the CV when I'm, you know, the resume when I'm applying to jobs. Mm-hmm. I can say, hey, I've worked on all these major research projects, and yeah, so.
This sounds like a dream position almost. Like, where did this all begin for you? This sounds like such an awesome opportunity, man.
Man, I'm telling you, it's crazy. Waking up and just getting to work on comics all day, every day as my job, and not like, because the past 6 years before this, it's been like, okay, I do my day job and I do school, and then on the weekends or late at night, I write when I can.
Oh yeah.
And everybody listening, every comic creator listening to this knows that. They've been there. But when I got the chance to make the switch, when SPC was like, yo, come on full time, I was like, yes. I mean, we had to work out some details, but yes. And it's been great. And so, I mean, it really started with Ben Humenick, and I'm sure his name will come up again. But Ben, he was the one that was like, yo, this company is looking for a script writer back in July. And again, this is how I say nobody gets there alone. People in comics are helping each other out. And if you're not somebody who wants to kind of be helpful, then you're not going to last very long.
Yeah.
But Ben was like, hey man, this is a company that does research comics, and it's kind of what you're doing. You should check it out. And I did, and then I applied. And I interviewed, they read my portfolio, they liked it. I interviewed and kind of just fit the bill. And here I am a year and a half, 2 years later, and it's my job. So if Ben wouldn't have said, hey, I saw this thing that might be good for you, I'd still be working a 9 to 5 that, is okay, but not liking it. And so, that's just, Ben came through big time and helped me out, and I owe a lot to him. So
that word of mouth is just crucial. I mean, I've seen it several times with this show in particular, where people have reached out or tagged me in a post with a larger, creator, and I've gotten that interview, and it was all thanks to just one person giving me the voucher, giving me word of mouth. It kind of really set me on that path. Let's kind of pivot back to your late night hustle with script writing after work. I feel like that's where a lot of the most creative ideas are born. It's like right when you're tired of just like working that 9 to 5 grind, you got through the day, and now you get to work on your passion. Like, I mean, man, let's talk about some of the work that came out of that.
Man, so some of the stuff you're seeing now, I mean, through the pandemic, I was at home a lot, and that is where people have taken note, like, man, you got a lot of stuff coming out right now. And I was like, yeah, but for 2 years, all I did was to use a basketball term, for those people who don't know, I played professional basketball for 1 year, and I'm very attached to that. But to steal a term from that world, I was in the lab. That's what I was doing. I was cooking up stuff, putting stories together. There are people in comics that can just throw out story ideas, 20 a month. And that's fantastic. I cannot. I have to find to have a story idea, I have to know who the characters are. I have to know what the truth of the story is, what is at the center of it all. And until I find that, there's no story. And so I remember I started all of this with Mustard Seed. And I was in theology school, and I said, man, I think I've got a story for an idea of a comic. So Mustard Seed is semi-autobiographical. It's based on my last 2 years living in Shreveport. So, most of what happens in that book, which only one chapter is out right now, is true to life. I mean, the whole thing's been scripted, but now we have an agent with the book that is trying to get it picked up. It's gotten in some good conversations. So hopefully one day people will see it. And when it comes out, I'm saying, hey, this is, this is what happened in my life in Shreveport. And you can go read the first chapter on my website for free. And so I was like, hey, I was thinking about just that life I had in Shreveport. I was away from it in Dallas. I was able to kind of think about what that meant to me, kind of, and beyond just it happening, but how to contextualize it with like my learning and just different things. And so I was like, hey, I think I have an idea for a comic. Went to a professor. I signed up. I had no idea how to write a comic. I'd always been a fan. And I was like, I think I want to do this. I had taken script writing. I did film as one of my 2 undergrad degrees. So I knew kind of how to write a story. And so I signed up for a script writing class in New York, summer of 2016, with Tom Brennan. He was the assistant editor of Spider-Man at the time.
Wow.
I was like, awesome. It was a weekend course, 2 days, boom, in and out. But I was like, I'm going to at least go get the basics. It was like an intro to script writing, comic script writing. So I did it. It was great. I told one of my professors at theology school who was over the arts department, I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. He was like, well, you need to link up with this guy on campus. He's a comic book artist. His name is Mark Pate, who is the artist of Mustard Seed and Thorn. I was like, all right, cool. I'll do that. I reached out to Mark. We met at a coffee shop, like close by our school and neighborhood or whatever. And we had a great conversation. And so we were like, hey, let's talk more. Let's figure this out. This was summer of 2016. I drove home. He drove home. We both got out of our cars across the street from each other. Our apartments were across the street and we didn't even know that.
What?
It was nuts. Yeah. So
did you, not to interrupt, but did you see him in passing like previously, or was that kind of like your first time seeing him as well?
Well, he had done an art show in the offices where I worked, and I had gone to it.
Oh, that's so cool.
But I forgot it was him. And then when I saw the comic he was working on, I was like, didn't you display this at an art show in this building? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, yeah, I was there.
Dude, that's so cool. That's trippy almost, right? It's like...
Sorry,
go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was like, that was the only time I had seen him. And then like, oh shoot, everything was clicking and he was across the street. And so we decided we were just going to meet. And then he kind of helped me navigate because he was in the arts department. I wasn't. I was over in systematic theology, being a nerd. And then I switched my nerdiness to comics. And so he helped me navigate. He was like, hey, if you really want to develop this story, which ended up being Mustard Seed, you should probably take these other classes that I've taken as well. Like, character and plot development was a class they offered. Script writing, advanced creative writing was a class they offered. Collaborative art and theology. So just thinking about how to think about your themes theologically. So all this stuff. And so I did that. I took those 3 or 4 classes that Mark advised and really built the first chapter and the story in general. And then at the end of it, Mark was like, okay, I believe in this. I'll draw the first chapter for you. And I was like, yes, okay, this is great. And so that's kind of, that was like a 3-4 year, that was like a 3-year kind of time frame. And then and because of that, long story short, I needed to graduate and you have to do like an internship or an apprenticeship. And internships at my theology school are like, hey, work at a church for a year, which I didn't want to do. And so the apprenticeship in the arts department was like, hey, pick an artistic medium of your choice and find a mentor and learn the ropes and create some stuff. And so I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I chose comic books as my medium. And it got approved. And Robert Wilson, the fourth, Robert Wilson, who's another just great human being in comics, like always trying to be helpful to anyone. I mean, he's just a great person to know. And I owe a lot to him. And now we're good friends. Like we were just texting today, which is awesome. But he was in Dallas. He was working on a book for Oni Press at the time called Heartthrob. He had always been helpful with my questions on Twitter. So I reached out, we grabbed lunch, and I asked him if he would be my mentor for a year.
That's
in
so
the program.
Cool.
And he was like, absolutely. So I went to a bunch of shows with him as like his assistant, Comic Cons. And we just sat there for like all hours, all weekend at like 4 different shows. And I just asked him any question. And he was really great about the creative side and how to get into comics, and then the business side. He was like, look, this will drain you if you don't think about it economically. And so his business, mentality going into comics, and then also his natural creativeness really kind of merged together and helped me out a lot. And he was the one that helped me get started. He was like, hey, look, art isn't free. You got to pay people for pages. And I had never thought about that in my life because I'm just getting in. I don't know. And he was like, and this is the thing that he taught me that I still do today to develop stories. He was like, if you have a story idea, because at the time I only had mustard seed, I had nothing else. He was like, if you have a story idea, one, no one's going to let you tell a 20-page story before you can tell a 4-page story. No one's going to let you tell a 4-issue story until you can tell a 1-shot. No one's going to let you tell a series before you can do an arc. So you need to start with 4-page stories. That's what you need to do. And I was like, oh, dang, I didn't even think about that, because I was writing Mustard Seed, a 300-page book with no other experience.
How many pages was the first chapter?
24.
Okay. And that's not too bad though, right?
No, but what I'm saying is, they always say like, don't write your magnum opus first. And I was doing that. I was like, here's this 300-page thing I'm writing. And Robert's like, well, you need to go write a 4-page thing. And he was like, because that will show publishers that you can write. It'll give you a finished product for your portfolio. It'll show publishers you can write a story in a small amount of space, which is what they want to see. And so he was just really smart with it. And he goes, and here's the thing. What you need to do, take that advice, and now you need to, he told me, look for anthologies where they will pay the page rate for the artist.
Ooh, that's smart.
Yeah. So, because he's like, look, writers have to pay for the pages, and that's, he was like, that's tough. And so because he knew my financial situation at the time. And so he was like, you can go and get an anthology. You have an idea, go get the anthology to pay for the pages, write the 4-page story first. Then once the anthology, because after a year, these anthologies, they give you back the rights to those pages, right? So then he was like, you have a 4-page story that you have as a pitch package. So you can use the art that somebody else paid for and your pitch package and send that to publishers.
That's smart.
I mean, it's genius. Yeah. And so every single story I've ever written started as a short that was produced in that way, or in some variation of that way. Like Thorn issue 0, right? That's the short. I had this longer story that is now with Advent, a 12-issue series. I had that, but I told the first 8-page story first. Black Gun, which is set to be hopefully published somewhere. I'm not going to talk. That's kind of been a little bit of a mess, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But Quinn McGowan has come on as the artist, and I'm trying to get that picked up somewhere, because we I don't know, publishing deal fell through on that. But yeah. Anyways, but that Black Gun started as an 11-page short story, and now it's a 200-page graphic novel pitch thing. Well,
what about Techno Nights right here?
Yeah, so Techno Nights was different. So Techno Nights was different. That I had, so I'm telling you, I don't have a lot of story ideas. I had Dakari, the 3rd most famous space pirate in the galaxy. I had Black Gun, which that's a 10-page Amongst the Stars that didn't get funded. They're going to revamp that anthology. That got picked up in that anthology. Yeah. Anyways, I'm rambling now because there's all these stories in my brain right now. But yeah, so I had tapped out. I was like, okay, Dakari, Black Gun, Thorn, Mustard Seed. That's it. I'm done. I have nothing else. I have nothing else to I need to write these first. I'm done. While I'm watching my friends and my peers, oh, I'm on 20 stories. I'm on this. And I'm like, I'm tapped. But I had one in my back pocket, kind of like a love letter to Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, and my brothers. I have 3 brothers. And so then Marcus, Jimenez from Dauntless calls me and says, "Hey, I want to start this like anthology magazine. Will you write a story for it, like a Spider-Man type, but with like a horror villain, like a Batman man bat, or like something that transforms into an animal or whatever." I'm like, all right, cool, yeah, sure. I said sure. I said yes, I'll do it. I wrote this terrible story called Dolphin Lad, and it was bad. It was so bad. And Marcus was like, oh yeah, let's do it. I'll draw it. We'll figure it out. And he was super supportive. But he was like, in the meantime, do you have any other story ideas? And I told him Techno Knights, like that was the name, and then kind of what I thought it was. And he was like, okay, forget Dolphin Lad. That's what we want to do. He was like, scrap this terrible Dolphin Lad thing.
So what was Dolphin Lad's ability? Did he have a special ability or anything?
Oh, I don't know. I forgot. He was, I think he was like he went to college at like San Diego
my
University
goodness.
or something. So
dolphins are like some of the most horniest creatures on this planet, if I'm not mistaken.
I did zero dolphin research, but he was like a tech genius, almost like a Riri Williams type, right? In college, but he's a marine biologist who's also like a tech genius. So he's like very much in the water and cares about these like ocean problems. So he creates like an Iron Man suit to do that, which it made no sense. And so anyways, we scrapped it. We started working on Techno Knights. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, what I pitched to him was, what happens when you have characters like the Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles where they're basically recruited to fight in this like eternal war as teenagers. Before they're able to make sound decisions in life, before any of that, they're out here fighting for the fate of the universe. What happens when you go 20 years in the future and they have families and they have to think back on that time, and maybe it wasn't as great as we always make it. Maybe they're kind of disgruntled, or they look back and kind of like, hey, I probably shouldn't have been a child soldier. That's probably not great. But then, and so they kind of like gave it up, right? But then the villain comes back and it's like, well, the fate of the universe, we're all, and so if you've read Techno Knights at all, or anybody who, the beginning of it is like all of these four teammates are now estranged. They don't live around each other anymore. They don't really keep up with each other anymore. They're very distant, and it's 20 years after they all saw each other for the last time, and so this kind of universal villain is back, and they have to like get the band back together, but it's not the easiest. So that's kind of what it is, and so it's like a lot of it is thinking about me and my brothers now as adults versus when we were kids, and so there's a lot of the humor is kind of how we banter back and forth. if you were in our me and my brothers have a text group, and if you were in that text group, that's where I'm pulling a lot of jokes from. So it's a lot of fun writing and thinking about that. So Techno Knights was good. Marcus was like, that's a story I've wanted to. He said, this kind of like Power Rangers but grown up is something that he's thought about a lot as well. And I mean, you've seen Marcus's art. It's dynamic. It's cinematic. The action shots are just really moving. I mean, just so good.
Yeah, I felt you two worked like perfectly together, honestly.
Yeah, it was great. And let me say this, Brent Fisher, fantastic. I mean, they are just one of the best. They came on as the editor for this book, and it leveled the book up. That if you've read it, and so I'm not trying to spoil anything, but the big third act of the first book is this, fight on a space station. That was not in the original draft. And Brent came through and said it's missing some big thing at the end. Like it just kind of muttered out, because originally we were trying to write the whole story as one, because it's 3 books. Okay. And we originally tried to write it as one, and then Marcus was like, hey, this is too much, we need to break it up. So I just kind of like ended it. I was like, oh, here's a cliffhanger, and just chopped it. And then Brent came along, and they were like, hey, you're not, this is not really a book. It's something, but the book itself has to have like a narrative arc and get to the end. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's a storytelling thing that should happen. And so they were super helpful. And I can't talk about that book at all without talking about Brent and how impactful they were to the story. It was great. And I think moving on to Thorn, Razul Berry came on as the editor for Thorn, and he is just so good. And that was very kind of happenstance. Like Mark and him know each other through a common friend. They used to work at the same organization, and Mark just wanted to get his feedback on Thorn. That's what he wanted to do. And so he let him read the 0 issue. And Razul read it, and then through some conversation was like, hey, can I meet with Travis? And so we met, and I don't know if he was like, hey, can I meet with Travis? But it was like, Mark's like, hey, it's worth a conversation if the 3 of us meet. And then Razul gave us a lot of really good advice just about approaching the story. And so I asked him if he wouldn't mind looking at the first 2 issues. They were already completed, the art, everything. And he said, sure. And so he did. And then we met again, and he gave like the best notes. Like the notes were good.
That's so
they were
awesome.
just so good. They were so good. It was like, I thought the story was good, and then his notes took the story to the next level. And that was super important. And so I just said, hey man, would you want to come on as the editor of this book? And it, took a couple of conversations, but now he's on the team. And every time he reads an issue or a script and gives notes back, I'm just like, yes, that's so good. And so having extra eyes about people who kind of understand what the book's trying to do, understand what the narrative's trying to do, it's just that much better. And, including Sheldon Allen, who is currently the script consultant on Thorn. I'm so glad he's on the book because let me say this. I first got introduced to Sheldon's stuff. I was in Forbidden Comics in New York, hanging out with Mark, because I'm down in Dallas. He used to be in Dallas. He's up in New York now. But my wife and I, we try to make it up there once a year to hang out with friends, see Mark, see some other friends. And so Mark and I were in Forbidden Planet Comics. And we're just, whatever, browsing, talking. And I pick up this book, Snatched, from Scout, just randomly, grabbed it, whatever. And I start flipping through it. And I'm like, this dialogue is some of the best dialogue I've ever read in a comic. Just flows, feels real, not forced. And I was like, who is this Sheldon Allen person? And I found him on Twitter, followed him, reached out, said, yo, this is so good. This is so good.
I bet he loved that too, right? Like creators probably don't get that enough.
I mean, I don't know. He deserves it. And so I started reading all of his stuff. He's got a great working relationship with Scout. He's got a lot of books with Scout. And then I found out later on, like way later on, when he was in college, he wrote an issue of Spider-Man for Marvel.
Whoa.
For Marvel. And I was like, dude, what?
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I did that. He was like, yeah, I did that like 14 years ago, 15 years ago.
A little something,
Yeah, whatever. And so it was great. It was just awesome. So that happened. Like we developed that friendship. And then when I realized like, hey, I need somebody else's eyeballs on this just to make sure the dialogue feels, authentic and relevant and not foolish. That was my first thought. Like Sheldon is the guy for that. And so I reached out and asked if he would come on and do that early on with the scripts and the issues. And he said, sure. Like him and I, Thorn gets socio-political. It doesn't hide its socio-politicalness. And so everybody on the team, from Tony, the publisher, to Razul, to me, to Mark, to Sheldon, share this kind of similar socio-political heart and thought. And so having different eyes on the book, because not everybody's going to interpret those problems the same way, but having 5 people who have eyes on the book and eyes on the script really gets to a good place that is kind of wrestling with all these thoughts, right? And so that's something that's super meaningful. And so having Sheldon on it was great. And then he is going to come on as the co-writer later on in the series, picking up
That's
with
awesome.
like issue 9, I think is when he's going to really start, we're going to really kind of back and forth the scripts. He's going to get some co-writing credits earlier on than that because there's some stuff that really needs some touching up. But yeah, so great team. I'm super excited. And yeah, that was me talking a lot to get to here.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
The point of this show is to really learn about who you are as a creator and, your work. I think it's important to learn about the creator first and then the work, because then you get a better understanding of the work in itself. I agree with you, though. I think having an editor can be very essential to your project. And I think, it's really evident that you took a lot of, effort and pride in your story and character development when you took those courses in college. I mean, because I think when I was gushing in the DMs, and I think even talking to Marcus, like the one thing I noticed was just like the character development in your story and your plot is just so good. I love the idea of you having someone get a second opinion and eyes on the script, because there's so many different levels of dialogue in this, ranging from, children, teens, then we have, adults at a community center. Then we have, the action with police versus teens and that side of things where, you see a little bit more of the corrupt side. And I mean, there's just so much and so many different levels to this. And, it's interesting because you have so much, going into this, so many eyes on this. But if I remember correctly, you caught a lot of heat with this too.
Yeah, I did. And so that's something that's been addressed. I don't think that, again, that caused a big conversation, and it's never going to, I guess, go away. I think the question was, I think the way I've articulated the heat, and it was good to catch that and internalize things, because I think the big conflict, it was being vocalized as me being white and the main character being black, which the way and the way I've internalized it and articulated it is the conflict at the center of the story is black-white violence, and so I think I think that the critique that I have to wrestle with is, how can you, being white, appropriately talk about black-white violence in this way? And that's something that I had to ask, because I'm not afraid to do that, because I'm doing a PhD in civil rights history. So it's something I'm navigating in my academics every day. The community center, the Roseland townhomes, the Rosebush Heights, the fictional neighborhood in Thorn, is modeled after the Roseland townhomes in Dallas a little bit. And because in the community center, I worked at and kind of lived in a Dallas Housing Authority housing project, I guess is the way some people say it, but it's government housing, right? So I ran the community center with a team of people, and lived in that community. And so a lot of the issues brought up there in the book are things that I was dealing with my teens every day.
Wow.
I modeled the main character after my boss. Our organization ran 3 of those community centers for the Dallas Housing Authority around Dallas. And one of those had a boxing gym. And so these are the things I was familiar with. And then also, studying the neighborhood. The neighborhood that I lived in when I moved there had a lot of affordable housing. My wife and I lived in affordable housing in the neighborhood, and we saw it get bought up at an alarming rate and flipped, and the people that lived there pushed out, and eventually we were pushed out. Like our apartment got bought up and sold to make room for, I'm talking like $325 a month affordable apartments, right?
Yeah. Very,
Very necessary and needed things in an urban city. you need affordable housing for people who are, living in an expensive city and given low wage jobs. I mean, all of that is just terrible in general, but you have this affordable housing. These apartments got bought up, and families I worked with, kids I worked with, saw them, have to move to outskirts of town and then like bus into work, all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, these $325 apartments get turned into $450,000 townhomes. And it's like, what are we doing? And so part of Thorn is me thinking about, this kind of thing that was happening to the place that I lived and people that I cared about, and eventually me. And what I was kind of learning that could be done against it, and people who were trying to do stuff about it, but it wasn't being organized as well as it should be. And so the book Thorn is it's a superhero comic, but it is this idea of like liberation from this type of oppression of space, I guess, if you will. So a lot of those thoughts were kind of going on in my head, and Thorn really got developed just thinking about those things. And then I presented a paper. The idea of Thorn originated in this paper. Like, I kind of presented the idea of this character that eventually became Thorn. It was a conference, an academic conference, on the theme of the conference was origins. Like origins, that was the theme, just origins, that was the word. And so I was thinking about like origins in comics, right? Batman origin, Spider-Man origins, just whatever. And origins out of violence, right? So you have Spider-Man and Batman are really kind of born out of, these types of death and just whatever. I was just thinking about origins. And then I thought about, what would it mean? What does it mean to be a Black vigilante in an anti-Black world? Like the world that Western Europeans has created now is anti-Black. That's what it is. And so what does it mean to be a hero, a Black vigilante, a Black hero in that type of world? And what is the good that you're fighting for, and what is the bad you're fighting against? And so those are just questions I presented in this paper, and I got the exact same questions then as I did now. Like, how can you think about these ideas? But I think that these are ideas that everyone should be thinking about, because we shouldn't want the world to be the way it is. And so I put it in a comic and gave the hero a face. But the pushback, again, I press into these spaces where I press into these spaces of knowing and learning and experience, not experience, but knowing and learning. I'm a member of an AME church that's African Methodist Episcopal, and it's the first independent free Black denomination in the United States. I did a lot of my studies in theology school, studying AME church pastors and theologians from 1800s to now. So my learning, my place. So there's all these things I can surround myself. So I'm thinking like, okay, I can develop this, but the pushback, because that doesn't mean I've ever had the experiences of someone who is Black. I haven't, right? So I the pushback I got was like, okay, but you're still white, like you still are, and that is an appropriate response. And at the time, I was like, well, I have this kind of like counsel around me that is non-white, and they've read these scripts, they've read the stories, they've given me feedback. But the pushback was still, that's all well and good. They can do that, but you're still white. And no one involved in the book is Black, in the creation of the book. And so that gave me pause and started to, something that was really earnest that I needed to think about.
Yeah.
And so when we started to fill out the team, I thought that is what the book very much needed, that type of input and influence on it. And so, but I didn't want to like force it and just, I wanted that to come out authentically. There were a lot of times in the creation of this book where I didn't even tell the team this. And I'm saying this now, where I was like, if it doesn't have the right team around it, I don't want to do it. Yeah. I don't want to do it. It will not go anywhere. And the first thing was the publisher. I said, this cannot be, Advent is a Black owned publisher. Mm-hmm. I said, this book cannot be, it has to have, I remember when Mark and I first started talking about Thorn, and I had been reading Advent for a while. I've been reading Advent since like 2018, and I love it. I love what Tony's doing. Mm-hmm. Always loved it. I followed Tony, always kind of like, reached out to him, for advice. He's such a great dude. Such a great dude in the comic community. And he's been doing it for years, right? Advent is celebrating its 14th year.
They're in Walmart now, aren't they?
They are. So it's like Tony has, he's been doing it for a while, and he's very wise. Like, all the advice he gives me, that's great. Even when I've kind of gotten some pushback and taken some heat, he's like, hey man, keep your head down and keep pushing. Like, that's what you got to do. We're going to be all right. Cause that was the thing. I had the Zero issue, that 8-page short story. And then I was like, hey, look, if this doesn't have the right team or the right publisher, it's not going to be anything else. Cause the Zero issue was really developed in the summer of 2020, where I was like, just really kind of upset with George Floyd and things that were going on. And it was just kind of cathartic for me, therapeutic, I guess, to write that 8-page story for me personally. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I had been following Tony finally, and I had posted some stuff, and Tony was like, I asked Tony to read it. That's all I did. I said, hey, can you read the Zero issue? And he really liked it. And he was like, hey, can I start giving this Zero issue away as like a freebie with my Kickstarters?
Oh, that's cool.
Absolutely, you can. That's really cool. Absolutely, you can. And so then, September 2021, I get a message. And I had no real plans for Thorn. I had developed the story, but I had no real plans for it because it wasn't going to go anywhere. Like, it wasn't, because I knew the nature of the story and who was telling it, and that kind of thing. And Tony reached out to me and said, hey, I now have Diamond distribution I can bring on other books. Do you want to bring Thorn to Advent? I said, because, man, I'm telling you, no lie. When I first started the development of Thorn and Alton, I told Mark and I told Robert, because Robert, he's kind of like, he's my mentor and now a good friend. I told them both, I said, the publisher that, if it was up to me, the publisher for Thorn would be Advent. And I told him that 2.5 years before Tony reached out. And so when Tony reached out, I was just like, man, yeah, I was kind of emotional. I thought like, this can be something. If Tony believes in it, then this can be something. And so then, we started developing the story, Mark and I, with Tony's guidance, and really thinking about the first couple issues. And then that's when we started taking the heat, and that's okay. And so then we started thinking about, well, this needs to have a good team around it. Yeah. And so but again, my thing was, it needs to come authentically. So when Rasul started giving feedback on issue 0, I asked him to look at a couple other ones. And then when he gave me feedback on those, I said, man, because he was very energetic about the story. I mean, he's like, this can be, he believed in it, which was great.
That makes a difference.
Just really believed in it. And so he said, and so that's when I was like, would you be the editor? And so that came in this like natural flow. And so, man, and then getting to talk to Sheldon and our friendship and getting him on board. So it's just the way the team has been formed, just gives me, just allows me to know that the book is in a good spot when we go to develop it, from script to art to the pages that, you know, to printing, whatever, you know. I mean, because Tony doesn't slack on that quality either. He gets, you didn't get an issue 0, did you?
I was able to read it digitally, but I not physically.
Sure. I'm talking about, like, he got those cardstock covers, like those.
It's different when you open a book up physically. Yeah, I agree.
But I'm just saying, Advent, Tony, when he goes to print, it's all top quality. So, so yeah, it's been a journey with this story. It took some heat. And again, I've never shied away from heat being appropriate and causing me to think about the story I'm telling. You know, there's some people that just want to complain about stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then there's some people who are saying legitimate things that you got to think about sometimes. And I think in how I've kind of grown up in spaces I've been able to evaluate the difference. So I don't know. There's a lot of talking.
No, you're good. You're good. You know, and I love just that little insight because, you know, during those community, you know, center experiences within the book, it just felt so real, so natural. So hearing that you were actually involved in something like that, like it clicked and made perfect sense. Cause I was like, man, like either this dude is just a wizard at this type of stuff, which I'm sure you are, but just like the way you were able to weave it in just felt so natural and real. Let's go ahead and we have the opportunity to pull up issue 0 and take a look at it real quick. If you still have time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. And yeah, let's look at it. And on your note, like, the advice people always give is write what you know and write your experiences and things that you've kind of had in life. And so, like, mustard seed, like, none of the stuff I'm pulling from some place in reality that I'm pulling from some part of my reality in the story. And then from there, you know, figuring it out as I go.
And then everyone watching, I dropped this link earlier when you mentioned the first book that you worked on. Right here is a portfolio that you can go and check out Travis's work. You could check out this issue 0 that we're looking at as well. And then we're going to be dropping the preview link for issue 1 that is dropping. Now, while we're on that subject, you said May 25th is the final cutoff for it?
Yes. If you want to read issue 1, May 25th is the FOC for that book. Yeah. So May 25th, get your orders in. There it is. Man.
Gorgeous cover.
I love this cover. I think that cover is what started the heat, the conversation. Yeah. Right. And one thing that I tell people about that cover is, and you can see it like way down in the bottom right corner, but it says after Rhapsody. So Rhapsody is a hip hop artist, and she has a song called 12 Problems. And so in the music video, she is, you know, it's talking about problems with the police. And in the video, she has this moment right here where she is kind of rapping in the position where Thorn is, surrounded by officers with their guns drawn at her. And she has this very, you know, not afraid of you attitude. I'm just going to tell you, you know, how I feel about you. And it's such an amazing song. I tell people, it's just such a powerful song, such a powerful song. It does a lot. The video is very it's just moving. It's very kind of emotional in a way. It brings out the emotions of you know, kind of what I think Rhapsody is wanting to do with the song. Like, hey, you know, I'm going to tell the police the problems that I have with them, and they're going to know kind of where I stand and that I'm not afraid of them. And so I just thought that was really awesome. And Mark kind of made this homage cover that I think is really kind of, I think it's great. And it's gotten a lot of positive feedback. And I've been really happy with that. Yeah.
And for everyone watching, right here is the link Now, if you are unable to pre-order this, simply putting this on Facebook and Twitter is 100% free. Word of mouth is always 100% free. And like we were saying earlier in the interview, I mean, it's important that you could, someone might not know about this and you could really give them an awesome book that they're going to love for future issues. How many issues do you have planned for this series?
It's a 12-issue series. So if you it's one of 12, and we're, goal is to make it to 12. Tony, the contract is for 12, so that's great. And what we're going to do is release it every other month. Instead of back-to-back months, it's going to be every other month. So that way you can get the issue, you can read it, and then you can pre-order the next one if you want. Instead of having to like pre-order in a row without reading an issue. So you'll be able to read the issue you get and make the determination of if you want to stick around or not. But, hopefully you will. So
I really love Thorn's character design, and his name is just so powerful. Is there any special symbolism behind it? Like maybe a thorn in a particular person's side or something?
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of that, but there is give me 1 second. Sorry. Not a very good interviewee. The opening I'll get to that in a minute, but the opening of issue 1 is, it says, thorns and snares lie in the path of the wicked, but the one who guards their soul is far from them. So it's this kind of like a metaphor where, where the wicked are, there needs to be something to thwart their wickedness.
Ooh.
And so that would be what the thorns and the snares are. Like they think they can get away with their wickedness, but thorns and snares are there to make sure that they don't. But people who guard their souls are far from all of that. And so Thorn might be caught up in this, the character himself might be caught up on, doing battle with the wicked in an effort to guard the souls of the people who are having to experience the evil that the wicked are trying to do. So that's kind of
way cooler than a thorn in the side. Way cooler than that.
yeah. But there's an idea. So, but then also, if you go back to that, I gave Mark. So you have this liberation fist that is a symbol of liberation against oppression. That's been around, for about 100 years now, and used in different types of revolutions across the globe. Right now you see it with the writer's strike, right? You have this raised fist right there, just like that, with a pencil in the hand, right? So that's kind of the popular use of that symbol right now in American pop culture. It's associated with the writer's strike. At different times, it has been that fist with a rose in it, like holding a rose, right? So I sent something to Mark and said, hey, take this symbol as inspiration with the rose inside of it for Thorn. And he said, okay. And he took that. I mean, it is that fist holding a rose. That's what it is. And he took that and he turned the rose into a shield. So it's the shape of a shield, a rose shield around the fist. And it was,
Mark is so cool. I just put it together. Holy crap, man.
Yeah. And so Mark is a master designer. He is, he's an absolute professional. He works in the film and TV industry in New York. He works on film sets full time. That's his job. So, he's feeling the pressure of the writer's strike right now too. As kind of things have stopped being in production, but he is a true designer and artist. And so that, and just creative person. Thorn itself, so as I said, I worked in the Roseland townhomes, and then my church is in another neighborhood kind of in East Dallas called Dolphin Heights. And so what I did was I took those two communities that I was living and working in, and where I kind of just spent all my time, and merged the names and came up with this fictional neighborhood called Rosebush Heights. And so that was the name of the neighborhood. And I said, Thorn is the defender of the rosebush. That's what a thorn is. And so in the end, it's not necessarily a thorn on anybody's side. It's, what does a thorn do? And so I had the big thing about Thorn the comic is about place and protecting place and systems that try to oppress our place of being and our bodies in that place. And so the name of the place is Rosebush Heights, and so the protector of a rose bush is a thorn. So that's kind of how the name came to be. That's kind of how the symbol came to be. And me, I'm also, here's another thing. It's leaning into genre, right? So it's leaning into the vigilante superhero genre. And part of that for me is you have to, if you want people to take your vigilante seriously, you have to have a legitimate chest emblem. You have to have a legitimate emblem, something that people can recognize. This is that character, Batman, right? Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern. You see what I'm saying? Like, these are the identifiable things, Flash. And so when I said, hey, if we're going to go in this direction with a superhero, we have to have something that is meaningful to the character, meaningful to the story, and then also something that you can put, right here in the middle of your chest on a t-shirt. And it just has, that's if we're going to lean into genre and do this the right way and not, half-ass it. Like, that's not what we're going to do. So
see, I knew asking that question was going to be important because I knew it was a deeper meaning than what I originally thought. I'm glad, because it's such an awesome way you went about designing it. Like, he's protecting the rose bush. He's the protector of the area. I gotta, is Dolphin, was that where Dolphin Lad originated from too?
No, Dolphin Lad is just a terrible idea.
Well, the name, did you derive it from that? No,
not at all. I'm telling you, Dolphin Lad was just me desperately searching for what Marcus wanted. It was so bad. No, none of that.
So we have right here some awesome, I love how you began this, with them just chatting it up, chumming it up, all these friends, kind of just eating and having a good time. And I won't spoil anything, but this is where we learn about, Thorn from the police officer themselves, kind of just bringing it up. And some of their earlier memories, one of the things I loved a lot about this series is just how real it felt. Everything felt like this was a conversation you would actually have with a friend or family member. Yeah.
And so community and information is done over meals, in all cultures. And so, sharing pie at your grandmother's house is very, I just like that. I've been invited to many, grandmother's houses to share a meal, in my days, so it's been great. So I just thought this was a natural setting. But also here's the thing. Again, this is, what can I pay homage to, and how can I I also like to be clever. I like to be clever if I can, but also how can we properly honor the genre and lean into the genre we're into, right? So first appearance of Batman is Detective Comics 27. Detective Comics 27 is I use that as the outline for this story. That first 6-page Batman story, Commissioner Gordon and Bruce Wayne are sharing a pipe together, smoking a pipe. Gordon gets a call, says they're talking about the Batman. They're talking about the Batman. Gordon gets a call, he's got to go to a crime. He gets to the crime, the Batman shows up, wins the day. Then afterwards, Gordon calls Bruce Wayne and says, hey, I saw the Batman. And then you get a panel where Bruce Wayne is doesn't have his mask on, but he's in the Batman suit. And that is you read Thorn issue 0 and you're like, and so that's what I kind of played off of. But I took that and infused it with, you know, what Thorn is trying to do, what Thorn is trying to be, in it, you know, for Rosebush Heights.
And I love how, you know, right away we learn, you know, so, you know, Texas is open carry, and not if you're black, Jay. So right away you learn these police, you know, they just don't care about you if you aren't the correct race in their opinion. And I love the way, you know, this next panel is. It's a very tense scene. We have both police officers there. The lights flashing. It's you know, if you've been pulled over, it's a tense situation, but you're fearing for your life. It's a whole different level, and I think you guys really did a good job, like, capturing that.
So I think so too. I think Mark brings out a lot of emotion in his art, and really kind of allows you to feel the moments of the characters. But the biggest thing for this was, again, I keep going back to the genre that we're playing off of, and the sandbox we're playing in. The caption, the narration there about the kid who is kind of under arrest, I guess, if you will, or being assaulted by the police. The captions there are Thorn's kind of internal monologue, and what he knows about this kid who is being harassed. One of the I grew up a huge Batman fan. That was my number one superhero, Batman. And Hush, the opening to Hush, the story Hush, right? I always thought, man, this is the coolest thing, because Batman's always prepared, right? That's the thing. He's always prepared. He knows everything about who he's going up against, and it leaves nothing to chance. So at the opening to Hush, right? It's just kind of a intro thing where he's Poison Ivy has Superman under her spell with like some red kryptonite kiss or whatever. I don't know. And so Batman's got to go and get to her, and she's hired all these mercenaries, these like ex-military mercenaries, top of the line. But there's Batman, as he's fighting them, has this internal monologue about he knows every single one of their names. He knows all their weaknesses. He knows the surgeries they've had. So he's able to pinpoint all their weaknesses. Like, this person had a shoulder surgery. And so he's able to take all these people out because he knows everything about them. Yeah. Right. And so I thought, what if you have a hero who knows everything about his community? He's so connected to the people, and he knows that, when their lives are being devalued, he knows the value, and the value of not just something great that they've done, but just the value that they are as people in that community. And so that was super important to me, because I have been in situations. My thing is, I've had to stop more than once. When I have been in my neighborhood, when I was over in the Roseland townhomes, and I would see a police officer talking to my students, guys I worked with, and I would have to stop and say, hey, what's going on? And there have been occasions where it's like, hey, there was one time where I stopped because the police were like, oh, this store down the street got robbed. And I'm questioning them. And I said, well, you don't need to question them. They were at the community center 10 minutes ago. So they couldn't have robbed that store 30 minutes ago. And so these are not, and so but my thing is, like, this officer doesn't know these kids and what they're up to. And so it just felt really important to kind of know in these moments, that Thorn is someone who knows his community very well, and he knows the people, and that's what he's about. He's about the value of their life against people who would want to devalue it at all times.
And I really enjoyed, like, the first appearance of him. We have this big purple cloud engulf the scene, and then just the silhouette of him, like right here with the sun beaming off his shoulder. It was such a powerful image. And then him, of course, going to town on all these police officers. in order to save this dude, because he was just showing off his gun. He wasn't doing anything wrong. You know, it was a present he got, I think, for his graduation. So I loved just this scene in particular because it was such a powerful image of Thorn in all his glory.
I love it. I mean, Mark, super creative, you know, again, getting to play in the superhero art style of, you know, at first you don't see him. He's able to kind of take out these police one by one. It was also very intentional, as you learn. He punches two of them, but he knocks them out, and then the third one is his friend, and so he goes a little bit easier on his buddy that you end up finding out is his buddy, and so that was intentional. And then just, yeah, I think that Mark did a fantastic job with this 2-page spread. And part of the way Mark and I work together is I'm like, hey man, this is what I think needs to be on this page. And then I trust him to come up with the most creative way to figure that out. So
I really love how
he likes it. He says, man, I don't need you to break down 5 panels, 4 panels and tell me exactly what. Don't do that. You know, we've been working together long enough. He's like, just tell me what we need to see on the page and I'll figure that out. And then he loves that. And so that's something that we've gotten good back and forth when it comes to working together.
I really love how outside of the panels you have the smoke. So instead of it just being a square, he broke it off and kind of put the smoke around it. It's such an awesome, like, attention to detail. Yes.
I mean, Mark's creativity and attention to detail is top level. So no matter what you're getting, I think you're getting a top level story in the fact that it is dealing with a lot of tough issues and creating conversations about those issues and trying to dream of a better future apart from, you know, just different types of oppression. And so that I think is the story's good, but man, Mark, he doesn't miss on the art. Like he is his care for the art is next level. So,
and you know, I don't think you miss on the writing, if I can be honest with you. This was such a powerful moment right here where, you know, you have Officer Lewis saying, you know, you're just justifying their use of violence, and then they'll use anything for their justification. I'm their justice. I was like, dude, this is such an awesome moment right here. Holy crap, I love this scene in particular. And then you're just creating a greater division, and he's like, and you're on the wrong side. Like, it's such a powerful page right here.
Thanks, man. I really wanted that. That's the first moment where we see, and it will be the first moment for a long time where we see Thorn have this type of moment to dialogue with an officer. And I wanted it to be very much about, hey, we're on different sides. And you wear this uniform that's supposed to mean justice, but it's not. And so, you know, who watches the Watchmen or whatever, right? So like that kind of thing. And so I liked where that page ended up. And I think the dialogue is again, it got a lot of eyeballs, and I think it ended up in a really good place. And again, I think that is the nature of this book. When you get that dialogue and the story outline, I mean, it's passed through, you know, 5 different hands, and that's why I love it. Like it's good because it's got so many people really saying like, okay, it ends up in a good place when you have like 5 different people saying, all right, yeah, this is how it should, you know, this reads, and we all kind of come to an agreement where, yeah, this is it. This is the conversation. So.
And then right here is the perfect throwback to what you were talking about with Batman Detective issue 27, how you kind of have Officer Lewis calling up, and they're kind of just chumming it up. And then you don't see it at first. You just see his head. He's just sitting there chatting. They're having this conversation. And then right here, the big reveal of him just sitting there in his suit, drinking a cup of coffee. I loved it. I thought this was such an awesome fadeaway, man.
Yeah, I love that page too. That splash page. I mean, the screen, just that whole thing, like the work desk in the back, the screens up top, and I thought Mark did a great job. And you've had the privilege. You are actually the only person outside of the creative team that's gotten to read more than issue 1. So don't tell anybody.
Ooh, yeah. I haven't said a word.
Yeah,
It's been hard. It's been hard about not gushing about it. But I mean, I threw that all in the DMs. But man, it's good too. I think you really have something here.
But what I would say is you've seen how in those first 3 issues how Mark has really developed the Thorn's lair, which you've seen how he's developed Thorn's setup, and it from that room. I love like how that is kind of like the pilot, and then since we've been under Advent, we've really gotten to develop a lot of fun stuff, and man, I'm excited. Like, I'm just thinking about the way things have kind of gone on just from that page. I don't remember what issue it's in. I think it's in issue like 5 or 6, because Mark is wrapping up. I mean, Mark's on issue 7 art right now, so it's like this thing is moving. But Jay, his kind of like sidekick from the very first scene in the 0 issue. For those of you who will pick up issue 1, you'll find out that Jay is kind of he's in cahoots with Thorn. Like they're working together.
Such a good twist too. I was not expecting that.
Okay, yeah, you did say that. You did. And so I was glad, and we knew that early on. We knew that very early on in the story. And so that's why when you look at the 0 issue, when Isaiah leaves Jay's grandma's house, Alton and Jay give each other a look like, hey, Thorn, the look they give each other when Isaiah leaves is, hey, Thorn might need to be there. That's kind of that. And so but something that Jay keeps wanting to do, and I think this is in later issues, I don't think it's in 1, 2, he wants to call it the Briar Patch. and Alton's like, stop, like, we're not doing that, like, stop naming things. He's like, you're Thorn and this is the Briar Patch or whatever. And I'm like, and it's just fun. Like, yeah, their dynamic working together is something I really enjoy about writing those scenes, when they get to have dialogue kind of about what's going on, how, like, because one thing I think that you'll find out is that and that other readers will find out is Thorn has all these, Alton has all these interactions with people he needs help from to be on this mission to protect the Rosebush from different types of oppression, right? But not all of the people that he's interacting with think that the way he's going about it is the best. And kind of even Jay in their conversations is always really kind of sarcastic with Alton about how he's doing things. And so, it's biting humor, right? I think sarcasm is good if it's biting humor, where, sometimes Jay's like, oh, are you just going to assault people all night again? Or are you going to do something else? And so it's, and it kind of gives, there's going to be moments and interactions with characters that we want to associate with the hero character, and I want the association with the hero character to be meaningful, but also people who want the same thing as Thorn, to get get the police out of this neighborhood, and stop letting people buy up property and pushing residents out, and you'll see the face of kind of those villains pop up. But people who want the same thing as Thorn, but they don't think that the way Alton's going about it is the best, and they have other ways. And that's kind of another thing that I have. I'm on a justice coalition in Dallas right now that advocates for teens in prison, juvenile justice. And that's
really cool of you, man. I love how much you are in the community, just like the main character, man. It speaks speaks volumes about your character.
And the one thing I don't want to do is I want to say that even Thorn the character has to evaluate things differently from me, because I can put some ideas into the mind of Alton, but Alton again, I am white and I know that my character is black. So it is,
Yeah.
that character is not me. That is not me. And that is something I appreciate you saying that, but I also always know that like that is not, and I can't be that character. And that's why I need other input. But also one thing that I'm trying to do with the characters is think about like, you know, I'm on this, the one thing I'm learning is I'm in this coalition. I'm at a church that is very outspoken in liberation of the oppressed. Like that is a very big, like kind of, you know, AME kind of approach to the gospel. The Christian gospel is about this kind of oppression from James Cone. If you are inclined to read theology, that's a person that you can look up. And so he's a big AME church theologian and just one of the greatest theologians I've ever read. He's like he's like there on my list. So sorry, I gotta plug James Cone anytime I can. But
no, you're good.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm in all these conversations. I'm reading all these people and different ways to approach the situation. It's all different. Like everybody has different ideas and they're all good. And so you need people working in different avenues to fight this like multi-pronged battle against the system of oppression that has been created that we call justice, that is not justice. That's kind of at the heart of the story. You know, I mean, the tagline for Thorn is he's the defender of Rosebush Heights, but he's the bringer of justice against a system of injustice. And so the system of injustice guises itself as the justice system, and it is and you know, one guy in a costume can't get it done. And so, but the story itself is it has all these people doing different things in that direction, and those side characters also develop their understanding of how to fight this movement as they go, because it's trial and error. It's just like it is in the world, right? Like you know, trial and error. What can we do? And to turn this thing around. Short of burning the whole world down, you know. And we can talk about that all over. we can talk because that is not an illegitimate idea either. And so yeah, that's and one thing that has been super helpful with Razul on board is he thinks in that direction a lot. He runs a podcast called Where You From, and he gets a lot of these different voices, and it's just kind of like, you know, gauging people and how they came to the point they are in life. But it's also, you know, he hears a lot of voices with a lot of different creative thoughts towards, well, it's mainly, I mean, it's a Christian podcast, so towards Christianity and thinking about spaces and that kind of thing. But because of that, Razul has been very, you know, like, hey, he has big dreams, and that's why I love him on board, because I'm like, yeah, let's get this comic out. But he's like, what can this comic be?
Ooh, I love that.
How can we model in the world what we want the comic to do? Can we create a Thorn podcast where, you know, Thorn's trying to fight gentrification? Can we bring in people who are doing that type of work in different communities around the United States to have a conversation about how to fight gentrification in your area? And then when one of the issues comes out, we release that. You see, so
I love that.
Yeah, so that's different ideas, but at the end of the day, like, it's like, how can the book itself and the characters be thinking in a direction that also in the same way in the world we can model this type of, you know, community resistance. And so, anyways. Sorry, you're getting me. I'm on a soapbox with my.
You're good. I know. You know, backstage in the green screen, you're like, how long is this going to be? I was like, probably about 20, 30 minutes. Here we are, an hour 20 into it. You know, when the conversation's good, though, you don't realize how fast time is passing.
No, this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate you having me on and asking thoughtful questions that you have, and just opening up the space to talk about the book, because I mean, I came on here to talk about Thorn.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to talk about myself a little bit, but at the end of the day, like, Thorn just, you can't, my hope is that you can't talk about the book. If for readers who are reading the book, you can't talk about the book without talking about the issues that the book presents, and then thinking through solutions to those issues. And if that's my hope for it. Like, yeah, read a great story. I hope it's great. We're putting in the work to make it great. And you know, the art is great. I know that. Like, I know the art is great. So read a good story with great art, but hopefully you think about what the story is talking about beyond the pages. You know, and if I take a little heat from that, that's cool, because if it generates the conversation, that's all I care about. You know, we've got a great team. We're trying to tell a great story, and we're trying to make it a meaningful story, to create different types of dialogue in the world. And so that's my focus. And I know that's our team's focus moving forward. And so my hope is that people come on board and as readers, and you know, as conversation partners, if that's what it becomes. So.
Absolutely. And for everyone that is watching, right there is the link to go to the Previews World to get this pre-ordered. You have until May 25th to get a pre-order from your local comic book shop. July 5th is when it's dropping, so get those pre-orders in. And like I said, if you can't, just simply put this wherever you can. Word of mouth is 100% free. Travis, now, with us beginning to wrap up the podcast, I always love asking two questions in particular. That's where I get to ask you for a little bit of advice, and then what you're consuming outside of creating. So for anyone out there struggling with maybe story building or building up just a character, what would be some advice you would offer them to kind of just help them get started in that area?
So I've already said, you know, kind of write what you know. If you're trying to build up a character, spend some time thinking about who that character is, what they want, because every story is going to have conflict. And so think about how that character thinks, so that when you get to the conflict, you can know what that character wants to do. And so spend a lot of time getting to know your character, the world of your character. I mean, Thorn, it's a lot of me being involved in these things, but it's also a lot of me reading like a ton of articles about, again, how would kind of defunding the police or getting the police out of a neighborhood look from a governmental standpoint? Like, what would, you know, what are because there's proposals on that. So read those proposals, like read that. You know, like what are people doing to kind of thwart gentrification? Why are there food deserts? Dallas has like the biggest number of food deserts in the country when it comes to like per capita. Why is Dallas got so many food deserts? What is the problem? Like, why is this type of oppression a thing? Like, where we don't have hospitals easily accessible in all parts of the city. Where did that come from? What is the history behind, you know, redlining in Dallas? Absolutely ridiculous. So learn about what
some really good questions though, right? Like,
yeah, like, and so the thing is, you got to educate yourself on the story you're trying to tell. And how would your character think about those things and react to those things? And so know the world they're living in, know the problems that they're having to deal with, know how they approach those problems. That's what I would say. Spend time getting to know your character. And sometimes if you're modeling your characters after legitimate people, you know, like I said, like Thorn is modeled after my boss with a lot of the things that I've you know, been reading. And so that's a little bit easier. My, you know, Techno Knights is modeled after me and my three brothers. So the conversation is just, how would we banter in this situation? Like if the four of us were dropped inside of a technological invasion, what would we do? And I have you know, there you got the Huron character in Techno Knights making jokes all the time, and my brother Dalton, he would make those jokes. Like, we could be facing an end of the world event, and he would have all those jokes. And so, you know, so if you're modeling, just kind of know those people. And yeah, so that's But also know, okay, this is big though. I will say this. So Mustard Seed, right? It's semi-autobiographical. Those people in the comic are real people that I am a character in that book. JP Sloan is a character in that book, and he is my best friend. And so, and then Johnny and Mello are guys that I know super well still to this day, who have become like little brothers to me, right? So the thing is, but Mustard Seed is also got fictional elements. And even at the most basic level, I took a bunch of scenes of our life and put them together in a fictional way. So those characters are also fictional. So that's why it's important to get to know the characters as characters, because I have to know who in the story Mustard Seed, I have to know who Travis is apart from me, right? I have to know who JP is apart from my best friend. Who is he in the book, right? So even when you're modeling something after real people, you have to figure out who they are in those stories. So spend time, if you're talking, so your question on character development, my advice is spend time getting to know who those characters are. And I'm glad that you caught that, because one of my favorite things to do is develop characters. Like let's throw them in this crazy situation, and then let's find out what they do. And I'd rather figure out what they do together as a group, as opposed to, again, it goes back to that idea of what Brent kind of threw at me for Techno Night. Brent, they were like, you're missing this big element. And I'm like, yeah, because I want my characters to just have this conversation for the rest of the book. And that was I always go back to this thing about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, right? Because they were friends, and they developed a good rapport. They were writing buddies. They had this whole group, right? What was their name? They had I'm drawing a blank on the group, but go look up like Lewis, Tolkien, Chesterton, all those people writing. They would read each other's stories. They would meet up at this pub. They would read each other's stories. They would give notes. They would do all that. Well, the famous story is that Lord of the Rings almost never got made, because all Tolkien was doing for the first, he had a whole book where they never, the beginning of Lord of the Rings, the first book was just in the Shire. They never left because Tolkien wrote 18 chapters of just the hobbits talking. And Lewis came in and said they have to leave. They have to go do something. This is not a book. This is and Tolkien said, I would rather just write Hobbit talk. That's all I would rather do. And Lewis was like, no, send them on an adventure. You can do all that Hobbit talk, but you got to go get them to do something. And so that's became the catalyst for Tolkien thinking about, well, what could they do? Oh, and then we have the Lord of the Rings. So, and that's again, an editor, a friend. And so Brent, they were just super integral for me. I'd rather just write, these guys talking, but man, they got to do something. Maybe have them save somebody.
Maybe a little something here and there,
Yeah.
So outside of creating, what are you consuming? Video games, books, comics, TV series, anything that you're doing in outside of creating?
Oh gosh, you bring up video games, and we bought a PS5. I think you and I talked about it. I bought a PS5 2 months ago now. Yeah. That has not gotten out of the box.
Oh no.
Let me tell you this though. I got the PS5 to replay the 2 Spider-Man games ahead of the 3rd Spider-Man game. That's the mission. That Spider-Man game, look, I didn't play video games at all from 2012 until 2018 when the Spider-Man game. I didn't own a game console, nothing. I had stopped playing video games. I had retired. And mainly I was only I played sports games. That was it. I was not a gamer. But man, when people were posting about that Spider-Man game, I was like, this looks like the coolest thing ever. I went and bought a PS4 just to play that Spider-Man game.
Yep.
and it was phenomenal, like worth every penny. and so then I played the Spider-Man 2 again. I played the Avengers game. Okay.
No, it didn't hit for me.
It did not hit. But here's my thing. My video games are pure escapism. Like, I want to go be Thor. I want that hammer to come back to me. And so that's what I loved about the game. I was Thor. I was Iron Man. I was flying around.
Flying around was badass, and being the Hulk and just like jumping and just brute forcing. Yeah, it was fire.
Yeah, so I'm like, that's what I can do. Like, I'm not gonna get into. I used to play Final Fantasy. Like, I played 1 through 12, every single one, and I loved it. And then I gave up video games, and I can't go back. I need to play 7 Remastered though. I need to do that.
Oh yeah, it's good. 7 Remastered is good.
Need to. That's my favorite game ever. But whatever the time. But anyway, so my wife is like, why have you not opened this yet? And I'm like, well, I have papers due. Because in addition to writing comics, I also write. I'm writing for school. I've got some essays due, but then I also write academically. Like, I have a chapter coming out in a book called Spider-Man and Religion, where I you kind of pull out religious themes in Spider-Man. So I literally just turned in my final
no big deal, just a chapter in a book.
That's it. Yeah. And it's my second go at this. I wrote one in the Spider-Man and Theology book that came out in 2021. So so I have those writing things as well. And then of course for SPC I have I've got a 4-page script that I just got the assignment for yesterday. So
dude, let's go.
A lot of that is video games have to wait. Now when that Spider-Man 2 comes out, that's getting played. But right now what I'm reading is I've got an essay due. I'm in my exam phase of my PhD, and the way that works is you have 3 fields. So I've got 2, and for me and my specific PhD in the history department that I'm doing it, section I'm doing it in, you get 2 history fields and then 1 philosophy field. So my 2 history fields are civil rights, U.S. civil rights history. It's technically called the Long Civil Rights Movement. And then U.S. religious history, American religious history. So it kind of goes beyond the United States and farther back. So American religious history. But then for my my philosophy field, I got approved for comic book studies, which is awesome because he's not at the school anymore. He's at a different school. But when I started, Matthew Brown, who's one of the leading like comic scholars in the country, was at UT Dallas at the time.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, there's a big, I forgot the name of it. I would have to go look it up. But there's a big academic comic book conference that goes on at the same time as Dragon Con at the convention in Atlanta at the same time. And so Dr. Brown he's kind of on the board of that academic convention every year. So I was like, yo, you can supervise a PhD field in comic book studies? Like, yeah. I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Holy crap.
So my goal is to write my history dissertation as a graphic novel. That's my thing. And so my other 2 professors are like, sure, that's fine. Let's do that. But Dr. Brown was like, I will sign off on it if you write. So to pass your exams, you have to write a 40-page research paper for each field. So I'm in the middle of my essay for my comic book studies, because Dr. Brown was like, if you want me to sign off on you writing a your dissertation as a graphic novel, you need to write your essay for your field exam as why that would be legitimate, as a legitimate form to tell history, academic history. So what I'm doing is I'm taking like the ideas of the comic book form and comic book communication from like Scott McCloud and Nick Susanis from Unflattening and Understanding Comics, and that whole realm of the form of comics and what the form of comics does. And then I'm taking some of these current theories on doing scholarly history, right? Trujillo, Silencing the Past.
Have you ever heard of Edmund Truman? He did Postcards from Congo, which is like kind of like this, where he went over the complete entire history of Congo and made it into like a graphic novel, like comic book.
Yes, that. So what I'm doing right now, and I've seen several of those, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. So what I'm doing now is making an argument about like why that is a legitimate form to tell history. And so I'm taking these, Trio and Maria Fuentes, these historians who have these theories about history, and then merging them. So theories on how to do history, legitimate scholarship, historical scholarship, and then the argument about what the comic form does, and then I'm merging them in a paper to create a thesis of here's why the graphic novel is such a credible academic form to tell a historical narrative.
That's so cool, man. That is cool. And that sounds big for the community too, right? Like,
I think it'll be helpful because there are some people who've written in this direction before, but the idea then would be I could hopefully create a unique thesis apart from people who kind of talked about this before and offer it up as like a conference piece or a piece of scholarship into the field for the community of comics, for the community of historical scholarship, but then also get my opportunity to just write a comic book for my dissertation. Like that's
smart. That's smart.
So I'm reading these historical scholars, these comic book scholars. I found out that UT Dallas has another Charles Hatfield is a big comic historian who is a professor in my department. I didn't even know. I've read like a couple of his books. So I'm a Christian person. I ascribe to that religion, and I say, some things have just worked out, and I would call that kind of an ordained thing to get me to where I am, because I didn't look into UT Dallas for comic book studies, but once I got there, I found, hey, we got two big wigs in the field of comic book studies right here on campus. So it allows me to kind of just keep pressing into this space that I really want to be in. And I wasn't even looking for that. And it just, fate fell in my lap.
It's like it was meant to happen. That's awesome. It feels like this chat was meant to happen as well. We had such an awesome time. I need to get you back on the show for issue 2 when that drops. When can everyone expect issue 2 to drop after issue 1 drops?
September. Don't have a date yet, but September. So it'll be available on pre-order in July. So issue 1 comes out July 5th. You grab yourself a copy, you read it, you say, man, this is definitely, I want to read the next one. Then you go to your counter at the comic book shop and you pre-order issue 2, which will be out in September. So that's our release schedule. It'll be July, September, November, January, March, May, July. So that's it for the 12 issue series every other month for 23 months.
All right, well, let's go, guys. So everyone watching, right there are the links. Make sure you pre-order this. If you can't pre-order it, just put it wherever you can. Facebook, Twitter, word of mouth is 100% free. I hope you all have a lovely Tuesday night, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.